30 years ago, even a little bit longer, actually back in 1977, there was a guy by the name of Wayne Charvel who had a guitar repair company called Charvel Guitar Repair. And what people would do would bring in their Strats, bring in their whatever, their Tellys and whatever. And Wayne and his employees, which were Grover Jackson, Mike Eldred, and Mike Shannon, would tweak guitars. They would take the fingerboards and make what we call a compound radius, which was designed by Tim Wilson of Jackson Guitars. So we would do compound radiuses on the fingerboards, trick out the bridges, throw different stuff on there, different pickups, all this crazy stuff to make it a better playing guitar. So one day, Grover went up to Wayne and said, "Hey man, why don't we just start making Charvel guitars?" And Wayne said, "Absolutely not. I do not want to make guitars." So Grover got all of his money together, borrowed a bunch of money from his mom, and back in the 70s it was like $7,000, which was an astronomical amount back then, to buy a brand, is all it was. So he bought the company of Charvel Guitars and started making the Charvel guitar. Just to put it on record, Wayne Charvel never made a Charvel guitar. It was always Grover Jackson, Tim Wilson, Mike Shannon, and Mike Eldred. And once they started doing that, it just exploded. People like Eddie Van Halen came in, Warren DeMartini, and said, "Hey, I want one of those crazy super strats, man. I want one of that, but I want you to trick it out and do a fancy paint job on it and make it ridiculous." So that's what they were doing. They were making custom guitars for people. And at one point, they were doing so well in business for being out of a little tiny place smaller than this, they had to hire a company called Warmoth to help them make necks. So they taught them how to do a compound radius and have them make replacement necks for warranty repairs and stuff for them. So that started growing. And then everything changed. You know, Eddie was out there taking his Charvels apart and doing crazy stuff to him. Because if anybody remembers, on the back of Van Halen 1, he's playing that white guitar with the black stripes. Well, that guitar, he ended up taking the pick guard off of it, spray painting it red, putting quarters on it. That is the same guitar that is Frankenstein. That guitar evolved into Frankenstein. So he was doing that to all of his guitars. And he actually only had less than a dozen real Charvels that he was tweaking out. And one of them was buried with Dimebag a few years back, if anybody remembers. So then up comes Randy Rhoads, just joins Ozzy Osbourne's band. You know, and in the words of Grover, he's like, who's this kid that comes in looking like Mick Ronson from David Bowie, you know? Comes in, like, who is this guy? He's just a scrawny little 5'4", 95 pounds soaking wet with a leather vest on, and says, "Man, I want you to make me a guitar that looks like a shark." It's like, a shark, man, what's that? You know, why? He's like, "I want a V, but I want it to be pointy and one side longer than the other, and I want you to do all that fancy Charvel stuff, but I want the neck to go all the way through the body, not a set neck or anything like that. Do something different." So they said, all right, and Grover, Mike Shannon, Tim Wilson, and Mike Eldred actually looked and said, if we put the Charvel logo on this headstock, it will kill the brand. This is the ugliest thing we've ever seen in our life. So they put the Jackson logo on it, the Grover Jackson. And that started something. Started a big change in guitars. It was like the beginning of the pointy guitar revolution, so to speak. Everything changed. It was the first time high performance met crazy designs. It was almost like if, you know, back in the day in the 70s when B.C. Rich was on top, if they had to make a guitar that played that fast, maybe that times would have changed. But nobody knew how to make that kind of neck angle and those kind of radiuses and those kind of rolling edges and dressing frets and doing things the way that they did. So they started something new. And Randy got that big old white Concorde and he put it on and played on tour with it on the second half of Blizzard of Oz and hated it. He hated the guitar. It was too big for him. It weighed too much. So they went back in and redesigned it and made Jackson number 2. And that was a black one with the gold hardware where the strings went through the body for him. And he only had that guitar for about 4 months before he died. And there's very few pictures of him playing it, but that's the one that Randy actually fell in love with and said, this is the perfect guitar. Hence the Jackson RR1T, and that's how they're made now to those specs. So with that factor just exploding, you know, people like, you know, the hair rockers came in, you know, as well as like the guys like Megadeth, you know, the Players, you know, the guys that knew how to shred. But then the hair rockers came in, you know, like the, you know, the Stripers and stuff like that and started playing them. And it brought everything out to another thing. It made it global.